Are you ready to take your business to the next level and unlock the secrets of financial leadership? On this episode of the Entrepreneurial, we are exploring the strategies and vision that drive Jamaica's most dynamic companies. I'm Heneka Watkis-Porter, your podcast queen, and of course, we'll be diving into powerful interview with top business minds and spotlight inspiring projects and mini features in community connection. And this week, we're putting the spotlight on financial mastery and regional growth with special guest Kevon McIntosh. This episode is brought to you by Liberty Business, JPS, Digital Video Concept, Madison Shy, and HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. But first, we take a break. We'll be right back. He's a powerhouse in Caribbean finance and a strategic advisor to some of the region's most dynamic businesses. Kevon McIntosh, assurance and advisory partner at Signature Creed and Associates, is a triple qualified financial leader and a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica. With over 12 years of experience spanning audit, private equity, and strategic advisory, Kevon has helped shape the financial landscape for companies across Jamaica and the wider Caribbean. As co-founder of Signature Creed and Associates and founder of the upcoming Caribbean CFO Summit, he is committed to building a more financially resilient and empowered Caribbean economy. Today, Kevon joins us to talk about leadership in finance, entrepreneurship, and the future of business in the region. Kevon McIntosh, welcome to the Entrepreneurial.
Thanks for having me, Heneka.
Awesome. It's such a pleasure to have you. And, I met you recently and I've been seeing where you're at, how your business is growing and just listening to you talk, and I'm inspired. And that is why I've invited you to come on, right? So I know a little bit about you. My audience, well, some of them don't.
Okay.
And so we're going to fix that. And we want to start with Kevon as my grandparent to talk about, when we wear short pants. So that imagery.
Yeah, we're in khaki shorts, eh?
That's right. That imagery that I've already placed in my audience's mind. I want you to take them through that journey. What was that boy in short pants like?
The boy in short pants. So
Were you ever wearing them literally?
yes, I actually wore them in, I guess, basic school because I'm from Bartown, Rosal in St. James originally. Went to Rosal Basic School where I wear the short pants, and then I move on to Bartown All Age. Life in Bartown was good. We weren't, well, the best way to put it, we weren't rich, but you don't feel like you're not rich given that you live in, because our house was in a circle of family houses, so we had our cousins and everybody to play with. We had a very big family. And then for me, I was just always a curious one, wanting to know more, wanting to learn more, ask a lot of questions. People find me annoying, but that's just how it is, right? You want to expand your horizons, expand your viewpoints on things. So after Bartown, I did well in GSAT, but then I was the top student when I graduated, so valedictorian, and did all the speeches, and went on to Cornwall College, where I really started to flourish. At Cornwall, I left as the head boy in sixth form, so that meant I really did well there and met a lot of connections, built my network. After Cornwall, well, while in Cornwall, I decided I tried to be a rounded person. So I tried sports for a while, it didn't work out. But then we're in the business club, we're in business club, key club, speech, music, a bunch of stuff to kind of brown yourself around the educational bit. But after Cornwall, we went on to UWI. I didn't get the full UWI experience that other persons would have, because while I did go full time, I could only go to school in the night because I was working during the day. So it was full time work, full time school. So I didn't really get to experience the university that other persons would. So back then it was Western campus that kind of offered. Well, it was me kind of having to pay close attention to the schedule and to say, okay, I'm just going to schedule classes during the evening, 5 o'clock. So you have some classes by the time it touches 7 o'clock, I'm in the back of the class sleeping. So it's going to class, yes, but knowing that I have to go back home and catch up on the studies on my own. Because there may be some classes where I would schedule it, but I know I can't go. Because I would have another class on the day, so I have to pick and choose which one I can go to, and then I know I have to study on the other one by myself. Luckily, I didn't fail, right? I ended UA on good terms. I think I had maybe 3.3 or 3.5 GPA, something like that. So I still did well despite the hindrances. So yeah.
Right. So I can totally relate to going to UA and not full time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not having the full UA experience. In fact, I started out part time, right?
Mhm.
And then in final year, I just wanted to graduate, so I had to do this full time thing, full time school, full time work. Totally relate. But I want to get a sense of your earlier days, going, between the short pants days and the university days. What were some of the things that shaped your values? You mentioned that you grew up in this close family setting, lots of cousins and lots of houses, different family members around. What were some of the things that shaped your values earlier on that were impacting on you?
I would say church did a lot of that. I grew up in church through my grandmother, right? She was the one where, even though we didn't live in the same house, we lived like a couple houses away. She would stay from her house and just shout my name.
Kevin?
So we know every Sunday when we go to church, we can't even sit away from her. She's gonna see when we come in and just signal that, listen, come sit down right there, so, and don't move. And I just have to stick to that and don't move. And then after
Well, that's not have the same life.
probably I don't know, maybe, but it's like she was very serious about that, and I kind of followed up with that, right? I started going by myself at one point because she got sick, and I started to go by myself, and it just caught on. I ended up getting baptized early, I think maybe about 8 or 9 grade. And by that time, I joined the youth department. Maybe the next year, I was youth president for about 3 years. I was on praise and worship. So it just all fit, and that kind of shaped who I am personally, spiritually. And I also was a person, I was very curious about what was out there, because you grow up in a community that is somewhat close knit, and if you don't experience what's outside, you don't know what's out there, right? And I think going to Cornwall as well, that kind of opened the horizon in terms of what is possible. Because you might come from a modest home and you think everything is okay, but when you go to Cornwall, this person's father is the owner of that business, that person's mother is a CEO for there, and they have a PSP and I have a, they say, okay, I can achieve this as well, right? So that kind of helped me to kind of sit down and say, okay, I'm going to achieve whatever I want, no matter what.
Right. So you're now at this point and going to achieve whatever I want, no matter what. How and why did you choose the path that you're now on? Because when you said earlier that you were a talker, you asked a lot of questions. One may think, oh, perhaps you would end up in the legal field.
So I do have a love for numbers, first and foremost. So I was very good at math, and it almost sometimes words have a way of driving who you are. Sometimes someone may say to you that, you look like a lawyer. You don't even know what a lawyer is, but innately you say, okay, let me look at that and see. For tongue, exactly. So I think when I was younger, someone would say, you're good at math, when you might be an accountant, but I don't know what an accountant is, right? And as a young person, you just continue on that same thread. Oh, I'm going to be an accountant. Oh, I'm going to be an accountant. But then after a while, I started to research and see what it is. And what I saw was that yes, you can be an accountant, but yes, you can be much more than that. Becoming an accountant is just a starting point, right? So I started to be deliberate in terms of how I'm going to achieve stuff and set clear 5-year goals at each point in time. So every 5 years, I set a new bunch of goals in terms of what I want to achieve. When I was in high school, I said, okay, I know I have to get this, and these subjects. So I'm going to aim to getting these subjects and move on. When I went to sixth form, same thing. When I went to, even when I was going to university, I knew I couldn't afford the university, but I had a set plan. I said, okay, I'm gonna get a student loan for the first year because to get a scholarship to university, you have to do very well, right? Getting ones for the island, I didn't get all of that. So I had to get student loan for the first year, but then I said one thing to myself. In my first year, I'm going to do so well that I'm going to get a scholarship for the last 2 years. I ended the first year, I think it was a 3.9 GPA, so I got a scholarship for the last 2 years. So I knew that don't worry too much about financing, just focus on work and focus on school.
Don't worry too much about financing, just focus on work. And on that note, take a break. We're going to be coming right back to get into Kevon's accounting, financial journey, and just insights that he has for us. Let's take a break.
Oh, Jamaica, rise, we're built with fire, passion and vibes, and through it all, there's a glow inside. Let's keep our shine alive.
From the market to the factory floors, from the hillside green to golden shores.
We're reaching heights, our energy that lights the sky. Shine bright, Jamaica. Shine bright, Jamaica. Feel the rhythm, we're on track. Feel it, feel it. Together we rise, together we climb. JPS Jamaica, together we shine.
Shine from the ends, shine with your family, shine with your friends. Light up the streets and make the vibes blend. Yo, JPS, and make the shine never end.
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial You. I'm here with Kevon McIntosh of Signature Creed and Associates. Before the break, Kevon, we're talking about your early life and going to university and stuff. Now we want to get into the real nitty-gritty of the financial industry. When I think about finance, even growing up, I was so afraid of the numbers, and I think I still am. And I found it to be very boring. What about accounting that is attractive to you?
You said something very important, right? Most times people think about numbers accounting, they think about it as being boring, you just add in 1 and 2 and get 3. But from my perspective, it's all about strategy. The numbers provide the foundation in terms of what is actually happening, and then you have to also come back from the strategic sense to say, okay, this is what happened, good or bad. This is how we're going to chart the path going forward to either continue and improve on the good or find a way to fix the bad. Right? So from my perspective, it's not just about adding 1 and 2. It's about adding 1 and 2, yes, but understand how we get to 10 or 5 or 16 or however amount you want to multiply it by. Right? It's all about strategy from my perspective. It's not just about accounting.
It's not just about accounting,
No.
but the strategy.
Yeah.
But let's talk strategy. And why is it that business owners need to know the numbers, need to be familiar with their numbers, need to be very intimate with their numbers?
All right, I'm gonna try and tell a story without giving too much away, right? You have your business running. You're in a period where I like to call peacetime. In peacetime, everything is wonderful. You have multiple clients paying you millions in dollars. If you want to buy a new shoes, don't worry, just swipe the card. If the business needs a new car, don't worry, just swipe the card and make the bank transfer, because you have enough clients coming in that can provide the cash flow on a continuous basis, regardless of the expense, to ensure you meet what your wants are. Right? I say wants, not needs. Now, the economy is in a slump. The business is going down slowly. One of your largest clients realize that the economy is impacting them more than they expected, they reach out as a Heneka. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to cut your budget by 80% because we're having issues on our side. You said, okay, maybe they were maybe 20% of your revenue, but you still have the other 80 that's supplementing you. 4 more clients call who had maybe a 60% concentration in revenue that say they're not cutting by 80, they're cutting by 100. So all of that revenue is now gone. You are officially in wartime. Revenue is cut, cash flow is cut, but your expenses are still there. This is the first time now that you are going to say, why is it that I don't have any money? The first time that you as an entrepreneur are going to say, how am I going to meet my expenses for the next couple of weeks? Because maybe you had a bookkeeper or an accountant doing your books, but you could care zero. All you cared about was that there's enough money in the bank account to cover your expenses. Now you're running back and say, okay, how do I meet the next 3 or 4 weeks worth of expenses, the next month or 2 in payroll with the current revenue holding that I have on the books? So for some entrepreneurs, and I realize it's not specific to any one person, entrepreneurs, I won't say in general, but majority of them, they tend to focus more on driving the business rather than knowing what is happening within the business. And one of the important aspects of that is the finances. Knowing what your net profit margins are, what your gross profit margins are, what your return on invested capital is, what your cash burn rate is. If it is that you have 50 million in a bank account now, how far will that carry out into the future if you don't earn any more revenue? So it's very important for entrepreneurs to understand not just how you move the business forward in terms of strategy, but how the business is operating internally in terms of finances.
And so the problem you solve for clients is?
The problem I solve is giving them that understanding in terms of what does it cost to run your business and how can we improve on that from a strategic perspective, and then how can we assist you in achieving your goals within an efficient and effective means, which is basically what a CFO does. Because a CFO's role is to ensure that your goals as the CEO or the entrepreneur are achieved as efficiently as possible, as effectively as possible within that set timeline, and even exceeding whatever timelines you have set before.
Yeah, so when you first, or a client first engage you,
Mhm.
Kevon, what is the reaction or, the mindset that they come to you with? I see you smiling, like there's a story there. But what is the mindset that they come with versus what they should really have?
All right, so first and foremost, I don't just offer the CFO service, but that is kind of my baby because it's a small industry or a niche market in Jamaica that we're trying to make more known, right? However, clients sometimes will come to you and say, I don't understand why I don't have any money, or I need to raise $50 million, help me do that, or these are my core goals. I needed to build a projection for me and then help me to achieve what is in the projection. But sometimes they'll come with lofty goals, but when you take a look at their books, you kind of have to bring them back down to earth. Sometimes you have to be as honest with them as possible. You have to show them some tough love. And I always start there in terms of explaining why they are where they are. And then if they are responsible, you have to let them know they're the ones responsible. Because sometimes a business fails not because the model is not good, but because the leadership is bad. That's a hard truth, but not a lot of entrepreneurs like to hear. Because you may be a good person in terms of coming up with the ideas and maybe putting plans together, but you suck, sorry, where execution is concerned, right? So you have to know those truths and then work around those truths, because not everything is finance related. Sometimes you don't have the right team members in place. Sometimes you may need to work and improve yourself in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes even you just need some coaching if needs be. It doesn't have, and that is why for me, when I get a new engagement, I don't accept it immediately. Because you may come to me and say, I think I need a CFO or a fractional CFO. I may come back to you and say, you don't. you need to find a management trainee, or you need to hire this staff or whatever it is. If I don't think that I can add value to your business from what I do, I'll turn you away and send you somewhere else.
Right. So you mentioned the term fractional CEO and CFO, fractional CFO. And in the last couple of years,
Mhm.
the fractional CFO, CEO, all of this.
Yeah, man, it's a buzz. It's a buzz. Yeah.
So for those who have not yet caught into the buzz, tell us, what is that really?
Anything fractional, it's basically a professional who has experience in that particular field offering their services on a part-time basis. So same thing as a part-time CFO, same thing sometimes as a virtual CFO or virtual COO, CEO, whatever it is. Anything that they provide on a part-time basis. So from my perspective, I offer that service to varying sizes of companies on a part-time basis. And to be honest, in some cases rather, I will say part-time, but to be honest, whenever you need me, I'm there to assist. I'm on call. I'm always on call.
All right. So the benefit to a client to engage you fractionally, what's it to them?
It comes down to strategic guidance and management. It comes down to financial management, cash flow management, maybe fundraising assistance. Maybe you're trying to get ready for IPO and you need that level of assistance. I'm there for you, right? It's not a one size fits all kind of situation. So sometimes it may be difficult to list off everything that we can assist with. We may assist your business, assist what you need, and realize this is something very niche. This is a niche problem that you have, and we'll work with you to find a way to resolve whatever problems you have. At the end of the day, it's having that person beside you that can hold your hand and bring you through whatever you need to assist with the business.
Do you think that the advent of the pandemic that we all face, there's nobody right now can tell you, I don't know what that is, right? How much of a factor has that been in contributing to fractional work coming about?
I wouldn't say it's had a major impact, right? I think it comes down to cost effectiveness and value creation, right? Because not all entities need a CFO full time. Because if we're being honest, if you're going to get a full-time CFO, one that knows what they're doing and can actually impact the value in your business, if you're going to speak in US terms, you're looking at starting at maybe 80,000 upwards to 160,000. It's a lot of money, right? But then when you're looking at a fractional CFO now, it's someone that you don't need in office every single day, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 160 for the month. You need them maybe 2 days for the week. You need them for board meetings. You need them for when you're doing big financing. Those persons you bring in on a as a need basis. Then that is what kind of sells in terms of growing entities, some mature entities that don't really need that person full time as well, because it works for them from a cost perspective, it works for them from a strategic perspective, and it works for them from a value creation perspective.
Interesting concept that you're sharing with us, Kevon. So we have a lot more to speak about, right? And we're going to take a break right now. And when we come back, we want to look at, you mentioned something earlier about IPO, and we want to get a little bit into that.
Okay.
Stay with us. Our conversation with Kevon McIntosh continues right after this.
What great stories do you want to tell today? We are your storytellers. We are Digital Video Concept. Trendsetters. Employing cutting-edge digital editing technology to deliver superior products on time, every time. Producing extraordinary imagery with high-definition cameras on the ground and in the sky. Excellence is in our nature. Call us today for all your video storytelling need. Are you ready? We are ready. Let's go!
welcome back. It's the Entrepreneurial You with Heneka Watkis-Porter, and my guest is Kevon McIntosh. Now, Kevon, before the break, you alluded to the whole IPO. You mentioned something about IPO. First, I want you to define IPO. That's number one. And two, I want you to talk about the journey to taking an entrepreneur from startup phase to listing on listing their business on a stock exchange.
Wow.
I know it's very
I feel like I'm back in UA again. All right, so IPO, initial public offering, is basically when a company decides to raise money from the public market, which is basically you, me, or a cameraman, and they list their stocks on the exchange from which you can trade on a regular basis. So that's the method in which businesses will use to raise money, and where also investors or private equity investors or direct investors will use to sell their investments on the public market as well.
Okay. So we're taking a company, a startup, very exciting, exuberant, young entrepreneur, have a great idea. It's going to change the world, perhaps the next Facebook, the next Tesla, I don't know. And they want to take their business from that stage, from ideation through to listing on the stock exchange.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, right? I know sometimes a goal for many entrepreneurs will say that I want to list my company. But I wouldn't recommend you even think about listing a company until you build that actual company. Because sometimes you'll start a company and say, I'm going to list in 10 years. But you'll have companies that will list after that period of time, and maybe after a couple of months, they're in dire financial straits because they've not prepared the business for listing and they've not prepared themselves for listing. They've only thought about getting to the destination, not what you do once you get to the destination, right? Because the fact is, you have to build a company that is structurally sound from an operational perspective, from a financial perspective, from a governance perspective, the latter being very important. From a structural perspective, you have the right people in there in terms of staff, the organization is well put together. You have a firm business model. A firm business model meaning that if you lose one client tomorrow morning, the business doesn't crash, right? It's something that can live and go continuously time over time. It will take a very serious economic shift in the market for that business to fail. And even if there's such a risk, you've provided enough insulation in that business to limit or reduce the risk of failure for the business. The next phase in terms of governance structure, you have to retain the mindset that you no longer report to yourself, right? Because as entrepreneurs, we like to move very fast and we like to make decisions on our own.
Check.
Which means that if it is that you're going to do something, you don't want to go to Kevon, you don't want to go to your cameraman and say, can I spend this money? No one who consider themselves own a business want to ask that question to anybody. However, if you want to raise money, you have to now get that mindset in place. If you're going to spend $10 million to buy a car, you're probably going to need your audit committee approval, you're going to need a board of directors approval. And if they say no, you can't throw a tantrum. Because more than likely, if they say no, there's a legit financial or commercial reason why they're saying no. Right? So you have to kind of hold that mindset in place to understand that, all right, and this is how it's going to operate going forward. The next, from an operational perspective as well, the business has to somewhat be insulated from you as the owner. If the business solely depends on you, you are a liability to the business. Because if there's no Heneka, there's no business. And you find with a lot of companies, even those private and some public, that is the case right now. If that CEO or owner is out of the company, it crashes. Because they hold all the operational know-hows, they hold all the business relationships, they manage all the clients. So yes, they may have staff, but the staff is just support. There's no one that can say, this is the person that will take over from me because they know as much as I know, or they know more than I know. the fact is that you will own a company, but you hire people that know more than you who can run the company better than you. But at the same time, you're the one with the vision, you're the one knowing where you want the company to go and can guide that vision. So you have to kind of hold those tenets in place to understand that operationally, you have to set it up properly. Governance, from a governance perspective, you have to understand what that entails, how it will impact you personally, and what you have to let go of. And knowing that you no longer make all the decisions. Yes, there are certain leverages or leeways that the board or the committees will give you, but you report to them ultimately because the board of directors report to us as shareholders, right? So it's a balance that that company would kind of have to take into perspective. So it's always important to first build a company that lasts, right? When you believe that your company can now last for the next 10 to 15 to 20, well, not 10, 10 is very short term, maybe 15 to 20 years or more, and you say, okay, I have something worth investing in. Then if you start to put the structures in place from a governance perspective, who do I think I want on my board that can assist in driving the strategic growth of the company? The governance is not about friendship. And some persons will put the uncle and the cousin and the best friend from church, or because these are the persons who they think will give me whatever I want. But a board is supposed to help with the strategic guidance of the company, not the strategic guidance of your needs. Because your needs may not align with the needs of the company. And the board has to show tough love. So you have to put persons there who can show that tough love. Yes, they know you from here and they understand what you're trying to achieve, but they may have maybe industry knowledge, professional knowledge, know-hows that can help to drive the strategic direction of the company, and that is the important. That's why, from my perspective, one of the core things that will help a company go into listing is who is in their governance structure.
So essentially, an entrepreneur wanting to list on any exchange needs to think about working themselves out of a job.
Correct. Different businesses across different industries, across different maturities require very different things. Like from my perspective, I run a professional services firm. That means it's low capital, low physical capital, but high human capital, right? So I may need to ensure I have the right people in place that can assist in creating value for clients. And then I may need to ensure I have the right policies and procedures in place to ensure the team is not misled in terms of what they need to do. And then just have the right clients in place to ensure I have a sustainable business. Because in professional services, it's more about the clients, the process, and the people that create a successful company or a firm, right? But then you may have a manufacturing company where it's about the physical capital investments, whether the machinery or whatever it is that you need, also the process, also the people, and also a great deal of capital in terms of money. Right, so it really depends on the type of company across the industry that kind of helps to determine how fast or how far can you develop a financially viable company. If I go back to a professional services company, we focus on cash conversion cycle a lot because for us, we have to ensure that we're collecting as fast as possible from our clients. We're managing our payables from our suppliers as best as possible, which in our cases, our payables are really our staff costs, right? Because yes, we may have technology solutions that we use, but those are mainly subscriptions that you have to pay on the go, right? So it's really managing the collections from the clients that kind of determine how we move forward with professional services. With a manufacturing or any formal capital intensive entities, they tend to go more about fundraising, getting loans, getting equity, and to drive the growth of their businesses, because the need for fixed asset or increased fixed asset is what drives the growth of their company. Because if there's someone doing manufacturing, this year they may be doing $1 billion in revenue from a 3,000 square foot plant, but then they decided they need 3 billion in revenue. They need a different plant, which may require additional investments, and they have to manage those effectively to drive the growth of their company. So every company requires different things depending on where they are.
So I know I set myself up for that one. I walked right into it. So I'm going to redeem myself by giving you I'm going to select an industry because I really want some solid takeaways.
Mhm.
So let's assume we have a lot of last episode we dealt with creative industries. So we're going to go in that industry. We're going to talk about manufacturing. Let's talk about manufacturing because
Mhm.
we have a very strong manufacturing industry in the region.
Yeah.
In Jamaica, in Trinidad,
Mhm.
So let's use that hypothetical manufacturing industry. Somebody's we have a lot of spices and
Mhm.
sauces in the region. Like that's is like one of the quickest business. I used to have a sauce line myself.
Yeah, so manufacturing is all about cost containment, right? You can sell your product for however much you want, but if you don't manage the cost of those inputs, if you don't manage the cost in the manufacturing or production process, you will run out of money as fast as you start the plant, right? So it really around what gymnastics are we going to do to manage the cost as effectively as possible. Where are we getting our inputs from? How long are we going to spend to manufacture 1, 2, or 3 batches of products versus, because if you spend a day versus half a day, you cut your cost in half, right? So it really comes down to cost containment and how well you manage the capital within the company at that point in time. There are some companies, it's more about revenue growth, but in manufacturing, because manufacturing, when you sell the product, the market determines the price, right? Because you can sell a tin of sausage for $50 and no one buys it. But when you drop it by maybe $5, you realize the sales have gone up by 50%. So you know now that the market is going to tell you that the selling price for a tin of sausage, regardless of how good it is $45. How am I going to now make maybe a 50% margin on that tin of sausage that is going to be sold for $45? How do I manage my costs as effectively as possible to ensure I have a viable business going forward? And that is where the gymnastics comes into play.
And we're gonna sell it.
Exactly.
We're going to be taking our final break from this conversation, Kevon. And when we get back, we want to talk about your upcoming summits, your CFO summit, as well as your leadership and your legacy. Let's take a break. Welcome back. It is the Entrepreneurial with Heneka Watkis-Porter, and of course, my guest is Kevon McIntosh. So, Kevon, we spoke a whole lot about the heavy stuff earlier. We talked about what a business needs to do to, if it is that they want to list on the stock exchange and all of that. I want to get a sense of the kind of work you've been doing, some of your clients, the reach you've been having, and some of the success. We want to share that with our audience.
So as I say, I run the assurance and advisory department, which is basically the audit and advisory department. I've been doing work across fractional CFO, other strategic and advisories, financial modeling, valuations, risk advisories, so a few things within that realm. I think a client said something to me recently where they said, Kevon, I don't quite understand. I know you have other clients, right? But for some reason, I feel like I'm your only client. And that I think I posted about that recently on LinkedIn because for us at Signature Creed, one of the core things Denzel and I, which is my partner, agreed on was that if anything else does not happen, we'll try and be as responsive as possible to our clients. Which is why I said I'm always on call, right? If you need me, and if it's super urgent, I'm there to assist. If you can wait for tomorrow, sure, we'll agree on that. But I'm always there behind you, trying to get you to where you need to be, right? There was one client where she I've been working with her for maybe 3, 4 years now, on and off. And when I started the firm, she came over immediately and was a client. And it's like for her, whatever she needs, I'm there. If it's a Sunday, if it's a late Sunday evening and she's trying to work through her capital table because we just assisted her in closing a fundraise and it's like during that period, every adjustment that she needed, regardless of the time, she just send me a WhatsApp. I'll get it done for her and just send it back because I know.
Don't sleep. Sorry.
You need to talk to my wife about that. But I do work some crazy hours. I won't lie. I do work some crazy hours because there's another client right now where I did the same thing for him where I assisted him with an acquisition. Right, we just completed our first acquisition on the 1st of April for a US e-commerce company, and one of my role now as a fractional CFO is to build out the entire financial framework for, because it's a group of about 4 or 5 companies. So I have to build out the entire financial framework for those companies, build out the reporting models, and ensuring that the investors that assisted with acquisition get their information on a regular basis. And like for that client works maybe from 2 o'clock in 12 o'clock in the day to maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes he and I will be on a call 10 or 11 o'clock in the night, going back to 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, just to work out kinks and ensuring that everything is working going forward. So I say I try to ensure that I try to match your energy to ensure whatever you need to be achieved is achieved in a timely manner. So I try to be as flexible as possible with my wife's blessing to bring some of those goals forward, because at the end of the day, I always like to ask the clients at the beginning of the engagement, what would you consider a success at the end of our engagement? What determines if I've added value? And at the end of the engagement, I always ask, did you get value from this engagement? Because for me, value creation is very important. If I don't feel like I'm adding value, I may end up terminating the engagement in the middle of it because I'm not giving you value for money. And I don't feel well knowing that I'm billing you for something and you don't think you're getting what you deserve from it. So I take that very seriously.
Yeah. When you said I match your energy, I remember seeing some t-shirts around I match energy. I like that.
Yeah.
Have you only been doing work in Jamaica or you've been
We do have clients, because we do have clients based in St. Lucia. We do have clients based in the US. So yeah, we're all around.
you're all around.
Yeah.
Global. It's cheaper. It's
Yeah.
yes, and I know that with that you want to leave a legacy, right? Because I think most entrepreneurs, although I think what drives us into entrepreneurship initially was selfishness, in that we want freedom, we want only things for ourselves. But it's more than that. We think it's selfishness, but really is what it is us wanting to impact. We want, yes, we want the bottom line, but it's all about.
So let me get a story. Let me get a story about that, right? Always a story.
You have a story for that?
Always a story for that. So I was trying to find it the other day, but I couldn't find it. So it was like about maybe 5 or 10 years ago. I have a friend that does designs, SG Creative, big up Sean. So so one time I told him design a GQ cover page for me,
Okay.
right? Design a GQ cover page for me. Kevon McIntosh assisting with the growth in the finance industry and private equity in the Caribbean. Because that was almost me creating a vision board in terms of what I want my legacy to be. So one of my aim is to really make a change in terms of what the Caribbean financial landscape looks like. We realize I got a glimpse of it when I worked with KPMG Cayman, because I was within their asset management industry doing audits for private equity funds, mutual funds, and I was like, why not Jamaica? Right? Why we don't have this buzzing market in Jamaica? And at that time I didn't know, but when I started to do research, I saw that the government was putting in new laws, and that was 2016, 2017. I started to do the research, and I saw they were putting in laws to implement new financial services market within Jamaica. And I think I sent a Twitter message to either Nigel or one of them to say, what's happening with this? But they didn't respond, that's fine. But then it was like recently I realized they picked up on it again and they started to roll out the laws. And in the last budget debate, they discussed them extensively as well. So I've always wanted to be a part of that change, to say this is what a part of my legacy is, to assist in the change and growth in the capital markets and financial markets within Jamaica and the Caribbean. Because especially where fundraising is concerned, entrepreneurs have it very difficult. Where fundraising is concerned, yes, we have DBJ and Bldg, but those only cover a fraction of the market. And there's so many red tapes that some businesses don't even bother to go with that side. But then there's no other practical fundraising needs within the market, right? You can always say to start the business and help and use the customers' revenue to grow your business, but not everyone is that lucky. You can always say, okay, I'm going to get money from my uncle and my auntie. Not everyone has an uncle or auntie. You might go to the bank to get a loan, but then I've always found it very weird. Even now, my staff can get a loan tomorrow. For me as the owner of the company, it's the hardest thing to get a loan. And and other persons have the same experience, right? So he's always trying to make a market where getting financing as a business is very, very easy to do. And I have colleagues who are also working on that. Simon Johnson from IDB is working on that. Ingrid Riley from Kingston, Silicon Valley and Kingston Creative. Silicon Carib, yeah, Sun Valley. Ingrid big man, she'll do it. So yeah, persons who are also working on that, but the goal is really to come to a Caribbean and Jamaican financial ecosystem that allows ease of flow of capital throughout the market. So that is something that I want to leave as a lasting legacy. That is something I want to work on.
I'm gonna think about legacy, right? Legacy don't happen on its own. Right?
No.
You're usually standing on the shoulders of
Exactly.
some of the people's shoulders that you've been standing on, Kevon.
So I'll always give credence to my first manager, right? When I left, I remember when I left Cornwall. I left Cornwall this Sunday was graduation. I started working, I wouldn't say internship, maybe it's a summer job on a Monday morning through my then at Montego Cooperative, through my then manager Andrew McKay. He was one of the first managers I worked with, and he inspired me a lot in terms of how I go about certain things, how I approach professionalism in the workplace and stuff like that. And I always, even to this day, Maki and I are very good friends, and we always go back and forth. He's one of my biggest supporters to this day, right? But other than that, while at KPMG, I had Ben Blair, who was my partner then, and Sean Cohen, who I worked with closely from KPMG Cayman Islands, who I've watched them work, and I've always admired how they work and say, okay, I'm either going to be as good as they are or better than they are, right? So that's always been something I've always tried to pay attention to persons I've worked with who know what they're doing and excel at what they're doing, and try to see how can I either catch up or get better than who they are now. For me, in high school they always say, yeah, you're bright, but I always try to look for who is better than me, and then try to say, okay, how can I get better than this person? Because that is what drives growth. That is what drives the creative nature in someone.
Yeah.
So it's never one person. It's always who within my circle right now is better than me or doing better than what I am doing now. And then, okay, what do I need to excel beyond that point? In terms of my family, I always... So I grew up with my father and I grew up with my stepmother, right? And it always surprises me. because I don't think they've always been around minimum wage because they started out as security guards and stuff like that. And I always wondered, how do you service a household of 4 kids, 6 including themselves, on minimum wage? And it's not until you become an adult that you look back and realize, wow, they did well, right? And even my stepmother, she and I had a very close relationship growing up, to the point where when she and my father split, I went to live with her.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was, because I mean we're very close growing up. She was a mother to me. But yeah.
Okay, nice. And we're heading to a close, but I want to talk about the CFO summit that you have coming up. So let's just share.
So the idea behind the CFO Summit really came from the perspective when I started out, when I left KPMG and decided that I was gonna become a CFO at Equity Capital. Much big up to Equity because they did give me that start and they gave me that exposure. But when I started out, I didn't have that level of mentorship from anyone to say, this is how you go about doing what you're doing. I tried to get a mentor, it didn't really work out. But then I did what I know how to do best, right? I buckled down and I started to study. I started to read, I watch podcasts, I listened to all those stuff. But I realized you had CFO Connect, which was based in Europe. There was some CFO communities but are based in the US, but nothing that is based in the Caribbean or Jamaica, taken from the Caribbean or Jamaican context, right? So from my perspective, if it's not there, why not create it? Right? So the goal of the CFO Summit is to create that community and network space where financial professionals or even other executive or professionals can network, learn, see what is new in terms of tech and digital transformation within the finance space, grow their network as well, and maybe even get business from those relationships, have partnerships with other companies that service the needs of finance professionals to create one community, one network that can drive the growth of the finance space within the Caribbean. So the goal is to have the first stage in the first quarter of 2026. So right now is just planning and getting everything together to ensure that it's successful.
Sounds good. Sounds good. What an insightful and inspirational and engaging conversation we've had, Kevon. But as they say, all good things
Must come to an end.
Or, in our case, we'll continue because the conversation can continue after this.
Mhm.
But we end this part of the show.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you so much for coming and sharing and, inspiring our community of listeners. Thank you.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Again, we thank Kevon McIntosh for sharing his expertise and giving us such valuable insights into financial leadership and business growth. It's really been a pleasure having him, and we have all learned from his experience, right? So we take a short break. There's more to come right on the Entrepreneurial, so I just ask you to stay with us. Coming up, Liberty Tech Talk. It's now time for Liberty Tech Talk, brought to you by Liberty Business. Rooted in the Caribbean, committed to you.
At Liberty Business, we don't just provide connectivity. We provide secure, scalable, and reliable digital infrastructure. How do we help financial institutions to protect your transactions? With dedicated internet and failover solutions that provides 24/7 guaranteed uptime. We help financial institutions to respond to phishing, ransomware, and fraud with AI-powered monitoring and incident response support. There are several solutions that financial institutions use to protect your transactions. Some financial institutions will send you an email as a confirmation that you are the person that have signed into your account, or they send you a code or a text message. These are ways they're adding layers to ensure that your credentials aren't leaked to the wrong person. By partnering with Liberty Business, we create tailored solutions to match your business model.
That was Liberty Tech Talk. It's now time for community connection. And of course, in this segment, we get to hear from you, our community, as you share your reviews, your questions, your feedback. But I also get to share with you what's coming up, events that you can be a part of. And this week, again, we want to share with you the exciting leadership cruise that is happening in November, between November 3 to 7, right here in 2025. So if you missed last episode, let me fill you in. In November, visionary women and a few men from Jamaica and beyond will be aboard Royal Caribbean's Liberty of the Seas for a 5-day, 4-night journey dedicated to leadership, empowerment, and sisterhood. We'll be sailing from Fort Lauderdale to the stunning islands of Coco Cay and Nassau, Bahamas. But this cruise is really more than just a getaway. It's a floating conference, a networking hub, and a wellness retreat all in one. Imagine waking up to ocean views, then diving into workshops on leadership, business growth, and personal development, all led by powerhouse women who are blazing the trails in their fields. And of course, we're having LeaderCast on board as well. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a corporate leader, or somebody ready to step into your next level, the Leadership Cruise is designed just for you. So, are you ready to set sail on your next chapter? I want you to send me an email at henekawatkis-porter.com or via WhatsApp at 876-849-2571. Spots are filling up fast, so don't miss your chance to be part of this empowering experience. We're also inviting corporate entities on board to partner with us for this event. And that's it for Community Connections. Remember, when women come together and people in general, we don't just make waves, we change the tide. Stay inspired, and I hope to see you on board. Every business breakthrough starts with clarity, courage, and the right financial strategies. Kevon McIntosh has reminded us today that with vision, discipline, and expert guidance, we can all build stronger, more resilient businesses. If you're inspired and want even more insights, don't forget to listen to the Entrepreneurial podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. For resources, books, coaching, and exclusive content to help you thrive, visit HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. A very big thank you to our sponsors, the Jamaica Public Service Company, Digital Video Concepts, and HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. And finally, from Zig Ziglar, you were born to win. But to be a winner, you must plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win. What good? The information about, no, I was not reading the script. Heneka, stop it. You were born to win, but to be a winner, no, I should not have said Entrepreneurial podcast with Heneka Watkis-Porter, but I can say it, it don't really matter. That is it, I think so too.